Today we're going to do some reviews of a couple of knives from the company Tacknives USA and go through several of the models they offer, benefits, what they contain as far as steels, body materials, and the quality of them. This is particularly interesting to me because I have a pretty severe hand tremor, and needless to say, a severe hand tremor and sharp metal objects do not go well together. I've used knives for a long time. Things like this, while an outstanding knife, has a detent position here that tends to keep it from falling, and to close it, normally you would just use one finger, and I'm 50-50 whether I'll close a finger in the thing and cause myself a serious problem. One of the things that helped with this is things like this Kalashnikov from Boker. It was very helpful, but I still end up having to close it. You can do it one-handed, but again, it's really tricky in my situation. Another option, these automatic side openers, which also good, but there's a closing procedure on them that's a little bit on the tricky side. All excellent knives, but again, they cause me a problem. Quite a few years back, when things like this Lightning came out, I was kind of blown away because this was the first time I'd ever been able to deal with any kind of a knife that you didn't have to interact with the blade aside from using it. There's no problem with opening and closing, and that was kind of amazing to me. I've been using knives for 35, 40 years now, and this was kind of a revelation for me to be able to use a knife that I didn't have to handle the blade either to open or close it, and it's still compact, fairly light. A little while back, I had noticed that a lot of other companies were offering these, but they were big dollar expensive. Some of the versions that I've bought, I actually bought these knives myself from Tacknives and paid for them with my own money. These were not sent in or sent to me for review. This is the Bounty Hunter, which looks very similar to a version from Microtech. It is not the same thing. As you can see, this has got some sculpting. It's not a smooth knife, which this is more along the lines of the shape of the Bounty Hunter from Microtech. But this knife is very light. This particular model is heavy, and what I mean by heavy is it is very heavy. It's a well-built knife, has a nice-looking blade. It's similar to the some offerings from Microtech and some other companies now that have copied the blade style. This version's blade is not. This is a bird beak, they call it, and I actually wasn't sure about this before I bought it. It looks like a reverse Tonto type blade, but it is not. Whereas this edge is sharp, this edge here is not. So you're able to actually put your finger or your thumb on anywhere around the top of this knife and not get yourself into trouble. These knives are excellent as far as spring. This particular knife I had bought from, again, Tacknives, but it was through the Amazon website. This one was around $45, I believe it was. This particular knife is probably the least, I would say, quality functioning of their knives. The blade's nice, it does what you expect it to, but it's a little bit slow on deployment. Not crazy slow. It does have some spring noise, but I don't particularly pay too much attention to spring noise because spring noise can be dealt with a little bit of grease on the spring. That's the main thing that some of the other companies are doing. They're doing things to just dampen that. They all have a spring in them. These two knives, however, do not have spring noise. This particular one has a concave recess in the buttons and this nice carved out X on the top, as does this particular model. This knife is considerably faster deploying than this particular knife is. Blades all come very sharp. This one ejects and closes pretty quickly. But out of all three of these knives, this knife with the dagger blade is I would say, the best feeling of them. This knife is very light. Both of these knives are light, but obviously there's less body mass on this one, so it's considerably lighter. And it just has a perfectly satisfying launch clunk and retrieval clunk. And it just feels like if you were to have your choice of how the thing felt, this would be what you would want. This just feels outstanding all the way around. Both of these knives from Tacknives are right at $100. Tacknives offers free shipping and a 30-day return or exchange policy. This knife it's a nice knife, but it's a little bit slower, which that's to be expected to a degree, because when you're dealing with knives this large versus a knife this size, you know, obviously the smaller knife is going to be able to deploy a little bit quicker. This knife is so light, I actually had to double check it to make sure it wasn't plastic bodied. These are zinc bodied, not plastic, but it's so light and the finish is done so well on it. It gives you the feeling that it is plastic, but it's not. It's a very durable dagger blade. These knives use the 7CR17 knife blade steel, and these are all outstanding versions of the knife for a lot less money than you would pay for something from, say, Microtech or some of the other brands that are higher end. And that's the main reason I picked these up. I like knives of various types, but for me this is the perfect knife style. Some of them are anodized, some have powder-coated finishes, and I'm not sure the finish they use on this, but this definitely is my top choice for one of the versions that they have. It's not too big, it's not too small, and the blade ejects and retracts just absolutely beautifully. These two knives also have the male triangular screw heads, and they both include a tool to remove the screws with. And I don't know if you've used things like sockets, wrenches over the years, but if you get a really cheap, crappy one, they fit loose, things tend to round off, and you get into trouble. That is not the case with these screws or this tool. This tool fits on here extremely snugly. You don't have to force it on, but it's not the kind of thing you can go in from an angle. This goes right on, there's no play, and it will basically loosen these or tighten these exactly the way you want it. And these tools are an extra thing on some of the other knives from some of the higher priced companies, and they're included free with both these versions of knife. And this company, Tacknives, has quite a few different versions on their page. They've got, I believe it's 83 or 84 different knives, and some of them are just, as an example, this knife has 3 or 4 different blade styles available. They run Tonto, drop point, serrated, partially serrated, this bird beak model, and depending on when you're checking, some of them may or may not be in stock. Same thing here. This one's available in several different blade styles, and these are all outstanding. This probably is I'd say the lower end, but again, it's half the price, and it's still an outstanding knife. You get no groove that's visible through any of the deployment buttons underneath, so you're not going to be getting debris in them. As far as looseness, these are extremely tight. Once these are deployed, you don't get hardly any wobble at all there. Same thing goes for this one. Once this is deployed, this is a very, very solid blade. It doesn't feel shackly or wobbly, or any of the problems that you normally get with an out the front knife. This one also, even though it's a cheaper knife, very good, very solid knife. This was slightly looser than these two, but again, you're talking about a knife that's around $40, $45. The main thing I was going to review today is not these, but these two knives. These are the same knife with two different blades. This one, as an example, obviously it has the side firing button. These two knives do not. They have the front or rear facing deployment. Both of these are very nice. There's a Tonto and then the drop point. Both of these deploy well. They're a little bit loose, not much. Slightly looser than the Bounty Hunter or the Dagger. This particular one, slightly looser than this, but not much. These knives run $69.95. The only downside to these is if you have a blade that has a specific angle on it. If you're a lefty, as you can see here, if I'm deploying this with my left hand, you're kind of doing it backwards. So obviously a blade for one of these, if you're a lefty, you may want to go with a dagger style. But if you're right-handed, these will deploy the way they should with the with the sharp side down. These are fairly heavy. These are around 4.5, 5 ounces. Same weight as this knife, and considerably heavier than this one. This has I'm not sure if this is an actual carbon fiber insert on both sides of this, underneath this clip, a little hard to see, or if it's just a decorative thing to where it's maybe a sticker, something along those lines. But there's a carbon fiber insert on both of these. These both deploy very quickly. Like I said, they're slightly looser, but overall, for the price, they're really good knives. These are slightly better, on par with, or maybe slightly better than something like a Lightning. And they're fairly heavy. All these knives have glass breakers on them, and they're simple to work on and do any maintenance to, which you will have to do on an out-the-front knife. Out-the-front knives all are obviously deploying this way. If you get any gunk on the blade, be it grease, oil, dust, sawdust, residue off of a hose, anything like that, it's going to go back up inside the knife when you retract the blade. So you will have to take them apart periodically. Not super frequently, but it's going to depend on how dirty the things you're working with are. But again, for me, these are outstanding. You can cut yourself with one, obviously. You are dealing with a sharp object, but you really got to work at it. And if you keep your hand on the handle where it's supposed to be, you're not going to have any problem with any risk of an injury for any of these. Both of these knives, actually all of their knives, include a little case like this, which, very nice little case, foam inserts, and they also include a sheath in the size to work with the knife, and they also include free shipping. So if you're looking for a knife, you don't want to break the bank, and out the front that doesn't break the bank, you definitely want to take a look at Tacknives. They are Chinese made, I believe, but they're imported and sold from Texas. So it is an in-country retailer, I guess you would refer to them as. And yeah, these are outstanding. As far as button type, I actually prefer this side button because the knife's automatically held the way you would normally use it. The side deploying on here, it's a little bit different. It still works, but you will have to shift your hand position. With this, you can just pop it out and go, and that's very handy. But yeah, overall, on a scale of 8 to 10, these knives are a little bit rough. You can feel a little bit of flash right around here where the sides, or where the two halves join together. I got these, there was just a little bit of scuffing on the carbon fiber, not much, but it was enough that, for new knives, I wouldn't want to see that. But with these other knives in their $100 price range, these had no issues whatsoever. They're milled extremely well. There's no flash, obviously, because they're milled and not cast. Paint jobs or anodization on them is just excellent. But these slightly less expensive knives are not quite as good. Obviously, if you get one that you don't like the condition of, you can exchange it with them. But there's just a little bit of flash around here on both of these actually. But other than that, the quality on them is really good. And these can be disassembled with more normal either Phillips or hex tools. You don't have to use a specific special tool on these. You can go to their website. Like I said, they have around 83 or 4 different versions of knives. And a lot of them, you're going to see an option for 4, anywhere from 2 to 4 different blades. So if you don't like one of the particular blade styles they've got, if you want something different, you're probably going to be able to get that body of knife with several different blade styles. And sometimes they're sold out of some of the blade styles, but they usually get them back in fairly quickly. But just keep an eye on their site. Check the particular type you're looking for. Blades on some of these obviously could be interchanged, but you're not going to obviously want to spend $100 on a knife and then have to change your blades out. Or maybe you would. I don't know. It's a lot cheaper than something from like Microtech. But yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give these a solid 8. As far as quality, these probably get closer to around a 6. They're good to a 7. They're good quality knives, but they've got a few little issues as far as fit and finish. The blades are fine. These are 440C. Both of these blades are. These, however, are the 7CR17 blade. And again, if you're looking for a knife that you're not going to be in any risk of cutting yourself or anything you don't want to cut with, this is definitely the way to go. And for me, this is the only way to go. I like a lot of other types of knives. This particular knife, if I'd had an option for something like this back when I was working on cars full time, this would have been the absolute bomb to cut hose with. Now, about the only thing it's good for is cutting myself with. And that's peachy, I guess, if you're trying to cut yourself, but in normal use, that's not what you're going for. So out the front are best. I don't know why these aren't referred to as safety knives. They should be. I guess the name safety knife just sounds too Sesame Street. So I guess they're trying to avoid ruining the reputation of them or something along those lines. But they definitely would qualify as a safety knife. Very sharp. They all come very sharp from the factory. And yeah, I have no complaints. The issues with these two, like I said, flash and a little bit of scuffing in a spot or two. But these run closer to $69. You can get codes from their site, get a 10% discount. There's other places you can get a code for up to a 40% discount, and they offer free shipping. If you have any questions, you can check with their site. I'll list the web address in the in a pinned comment or in the description, so you can check there. And I may be able to answer any questions you have on any of these other knives themselves. I don't work for the company. Like I said, these 3 knives I bought with my own money. These 2 they sent me to review, and I may be doing other reviews on their products in the future. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that these were bought, not intended by the company to be reviewed. I just wanted to review them personally. These 2 were sent from them to be reviewed, and wanted to make sure that was clear. So if you think there's any kind of a bias in the reviews, to let you know which ones I had paid for and which ones they had sent me to do a review